This is Amanda Powder from the 36 LD Dems and our endorsement interview for Bruce Harrell for Seattle Mayor. Bruce, over to you to introduce yourself.
Uh, Bruce Harrell, mayor, the current mayor running for re-election. Is this my 2 minutes or is just a quick introduction?
Yep, this is your 2 minutes. Go for
Oh,
it.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. I watched 20 seconds of it already. So I want to thank the 36 again for doing this work that Democrats have to do. I could talk about local politics. I think many of you know I've been in a local elected official for 16 years, but in my mind, this is the most consequential race in my life, at least. Given that we are a nation in crisis and the voice of Democrats are going to have to be very, very loud, and our clarity of purposes have to be very clear. And for those that don't know me personally, I've been a Democrat since 1977, since a freshman at the University of Washington in the dorms. And I've been really true to our party ever since. And I've been elected in Seattle 4 times, and my legislative track record is clear. I want to talk a little bit about public safety, housing, transportation, and climate change, just to look at those four buckets that under our administration, again, when I became mayor, I had lost 300 police officers and realizing that communities are vulnerable when I don't have that kind of police presence. So now we're getting 4,000 applications a year, 10 a day. We're in a trajectory to hire 200, hopefully by year's end. I have a superstar police chief, but more importantly, we created the care department, which is a non-badge and gun response, and they've responded to over 2,000 incidents. This is a de-escalation tactic that our country and indeed our city needs. And so we're very proud of that. The first chief is a woman, Amy Barton, and she's a superstar. Our crime rates are down, homicides almost 28%, crime across the board 18%, violent crimes nearly 12%. And this has been very intentional. Our use of force has been admirable from a countrywide standpoint. I can't see the clock, so I'm sorry. You guys said it's gonna. So I still got 2 minutes.
Yeah, you
Um,
got another, yeah, you've got
I can't.
another
I can't
20
see it,
seconds.
so I'm
Go
sure.
for it. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where I am here. So just let me say something about housing and transportation, climate change. I'll be very quickly. Housing under my administration, we realized Seattle is unaffordable. We put over uh-oh.
Now your time is up. We will
I
have
could
some
hear
follow-up,
that.
I think, and further
I was
chances
just
for
going
you
to
to,
say, under
yeah.
my administration, we put over $1 billion in affordable housing, 342 million in a tight budget, the most ever in our city's history. And thanks to the voters, we passed a $970 million levy, and we did the same thing with transportation and our leading edge climate solutions. And so I'll stop there.
Yeah, great. And we'll have our first question asked by Anita, and you may have time to cover some more of that in that. So go for it, Anita.
Please tell us why you are running for this office, what experiences you bring to this role, and how this informs how you'll govern. We'd like
Yeah.
you to focus more on lessons learned from your prior term.
Lessons learned from a prior term is that leadership matters, that I have 14,000 employees. I have an $8 billion budget. I'm pretty good at hiring good people, but what I've had to do is really evaluate the current leaders. The fact of the matter is I did not have internal systems in place with the city. I replaced over 75 to 80% of the department heads that I have to have inspiring leaders, leaders that understand cultural competency, race and social justice, climate change, that have values that are consistent with my vision for a great Seattle. And you become a great city by moving forward, by using our values here. We are compassionate. We are proudly a welcoming city. And you look at all the legislation I passed while on the city council, whether it's ban the box legislation that I was the sole sponsor on in terms of making sure the that people with a criminal background have a right to enter society. You look at the bias-free policing ordinance that I passed to make sure that we're not racial profiling. Again, when I opened up the climate change legislation, I recently enacted through an executive order. First time since 2013, we've looked at that in the building and performance standard legislation that is nationally recognized, looking at buildings, realizing they're emitting close to 38% of our carbon emissions. These are groundbreaking pieces of legislation. So I'm running in terms of lessons learning that I have to have the right people in place, and then we have to be bold. And so I've tried to take on things that other mayors, quite honestly, just didn't want to take on. When I took on, for example, even the tree ordinance. Remember, we had an interim tree ordinance since 2011. No one said we had to look at a tree ordinance. And while there have been some critics of it, when I explain what we're actually doing, for example, the first time monitoring on private property, the loss of trees, opening up the data. This is groundbreaking legislation. And that's what I've learned, that we have to be bold if we're going to keep this city on the right track. And I think our administration has demonstrated that.
Great, thank you. Our second question will be asked by Tyler.
The city has had policies to address displacement while allowing for more housing. However, these policies have not worked in many parts of Seattle. What specific tools will you use to stop Seattle's continued loss of affordable housing for low-income families?
Yes. Well, I think some of you may know I was born and raised in this city. I was born on Capitol Hill. I went to Seattle Public Schools. My mom and dad worked for the city of Seattle, and so I'm about as local as you can get. So I don't have to be preached to about what's happening to our city relative to affordable housing. What we've done is, as I said earlier, is that my administration has intentionally invested over $1 billion in affordable housing. And I was very aggressive when we passed a $970 million levy, thanks to the voters. Had to raise money, we had to promote it. We've had over 33,000 units of housing, with over 5,000 of them being affordable housing. We also looked at, through an executive order, the permit process. Under House Bill 1110, we realized that the state gave us some tools. And so under my comp plan, it's a balancing act, that you know as well as I do that some people do not like density. Some people love density. And we are bold enough to present a plan through our neighborhood center strategy. We think we looked at transit-oriented development, and like our Aurora out north, what we call the Northern Lights Project, we looked at from a very granular standpoint where housing should be embraced. So we put forth, we think, a strong housing plan. It's at the council's hands now. But again, through investments, $342 million, $970 million investment, cutting through the red tape through the permit process, waiving design review for affordable housing. From a policy standpoint, we're all in on trying to create affordable housing. The fact of the matter is that we have a lot of people still moving in Seattle. And so my comp plan that addresses the need for 330,000 new units is aggressive. But the fact is Seattle has still become a very wealthy city. And so that is a big challenge. And we'll embrace any new ideas that people have moving forward, because we're fully committed to creating an affordable city.
Great, thank you. Our third question will be asked by Anita.
What specific actions will you take to ensure enforceable progress towards carbon neutrality by 2050 and advancing environmental justice?
Yeah. So again, if you look at what I recently did this year through my executive order, I'm redrafting and redefining our climate action plan. That has not been done since 2013. This could have been done before then, by the way, by a council or a mayor. So the first thing we looked at is our transportation sector. And through your work, 32nd, I know you all had endorsed the transportation levy that I put on the books, 1.55 billion centered around safety and our climate justice work. So using transit as a preferred means of a method. And I sit on the executive board for light rail, which is the largest light rail infrastructure project in the country at 53.8 billion. That you see how we use transit, which is 60% of our emissions. Our transit plan is very, very strong. So the first thing we did is we looked at my climate plan and we said we're going to re-up it. We looked at the building emissions performance standard. We looked at our own fleet of cars and what we could do, by modeling what we're doing. Number one. Then number two, we looked at things like the climate, the tree canopy loss, where we are now measuring it, opening up the data, creating a tree fund, locally sourcing trees that we buy from Seattle from a Seattle nursery, if you will, to make sure that we have a 3-for-1 replacement. So when we lose trees on city property, as example, which was our largest area that we would lose trees, we replaced them 3-to-1. So we have a very holistic climate action plan that we are redoing through our leadership. No one asked us to do this. We know this is the right thing. So, and again, you look at the resilience hubs that we've created through community centers and libraries. You look at, again, we don't want anyone dying from heat exhaustion. So we've tried to use all of our assets as strategic tools to defeat climate change. Got that one
Great.
right on the wire.
Yeah, I know. Just exactly perfect. Great. Our fourth question will be asked by Tyler.
Our final prepared question before we go to follow up is around the current federal administration and how it has taken action and shown hostility against cities and counties with values like ours. How do you anticipate navigating and leading when we are facing such complex and dynamic challenges to civil rights, laws, funding, and so on?
Yeah. So I appreciate that question. And quite honestly, 36, this is why I really hope I could attain your endorsement. That I said earlier that this is one of the most consequential races, at least in my professional life. Now, I've been lucky that I think that through the last couple of years, I've elevated the voice of Seattle by sitting on uh, the uh, the Biden-Harris administration appointed me to the Artificial Intelligence Safety and Security Board for a lot of work we're doing in innovation. That I'm on the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I chair the Innovation and Technology Committee. I sit on the board of the African American Mayors Association. Um, uh, Peter Buttigieg asked me, the only mayor, to attend the G7 conference with him on transportation solutions with an emphasis on climate change. Antony Blinken, our Secretary of State, asked me to meet with the mayors of Ukraine, as I did in Denver, Colorado, to talk about what we're doing in Seattle. My fight for equity, diversity, social justice, inclusion is unambiguously strong. People understand that I've spent a lifetime fighting for these issues. That's why the governor and the attorney general and Senator Cantwell and Representative Pramila Jayapal, they are my friends in doing this work. So for me, I am positioned to make sure our values here in Seattle are protected. That's what's at stake right now, our way of life. They are trying to erase certain demographics from the history books. They're trying to roll us back in terms of LGBTQ rights, in terms of equity, as you well know. And I think that right now, for all of us 36, for all of us Democrats, that I will serve you well, and I've served us well. And that's why I've been working so hard to make sure the values here in Seattle are recognized. I'm not afraid to talk to anyone about what we believe in as a welcoming city. I don't back down on that. And I think many of you know my personal background there. My mother, who was interned during World War II, who did not live to see me become mayor, what she instilled in me is you fight for what is right. And that's why this race means so much to me.
Thank you so much. This concludes the prepared questions we have, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions from folks in the room, so I'll give them a chance to raise their hands and ask those, and you'll have a minute to respond to each one of those. All right, go for it. Tyler, you're our first one up.
Mayor Harrell, I would just love to hear more when you were just speaking of your mother. What do you think she would say right now?
She would say that, son, she says, never make excuses. And she says, now is the time to use every life experience you have to bring people together. That the fact is she knows she was a diehard Democrat just like me. And she says, the fact is we lost the House, we lost the executive branch, we did not regain the Senate. Now is the time to fight. When you lose, and I've had losses in my life as an athlete, when you lose, you go back to the locker room, you study the tape, you study the film, you pull people together and you fight. And you ignore the critics. You listen to them to learn, but you ignore the critics and you pull together a team. We are going to win. We're going to win the midterms. We're going to regain the White House because we're on the right side of history. She would tell me that when you're on the right side of history, that the truth will always prevail over falsity. And the stuff that's coming out of Washington, D.C., I didn't think we'd see it within our lifetime, but we are. And she would tell me to stay strong, Tyler.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I'll let it open up if I see any additional hands. I'll go ahead and jump in with my question. So we saw this this last year with the the sunset of the tip credit in our minimum wage local in Seattle, and a lot of small businesses expressed concern about the impact that that would have on them. And we've started to look into ways of helping the small businesses adjust and cope with that. What are some of your approaches and strategies to help our small businesses and micro businesses in Seattle thrive, as well as they do their part for keeping a living wage for our community and all their contributions to making Seattle a great place to live?
Yeah. So, having run a small business and as a lawyer, I counseled a lot of small businesses. One of the first things we started was what we call the Liberty Project. We wanted to recognize that the University of Washington, through their business center, small business center, and through their business school and through the Albert School at Seattle University, we pulled together in a group called Tabor 100, a put together an infrastructure such that we can give small businesses strategic planning, HR resource assistance. We started the Seattle Restored program such that, these vandals are breaking windows. We have to be able to help them offset the cost. Now, from a tax policy standpoint, Amanda, which I think you're really getting at is, I had to agree with the sides of labor on this, that a deal was a deal. And that because we realize it is very tough for a small business in Seattle. I want to be known as the best place for a small business in Seattle. So I'm doing a lot of work with cross-marketing small businesses, making sure everyone knows we have to have a small business. We're putting businesses in downtown Seattle and we're subsidizing their rent such that they could be in downtown Seattle. So from a tax standpoint and a B&O tax standpoint, we're very, very mindful of the burden that small businesses are because we have to uplift them in every way we can.
Great, thank you. I'm looking for any other questions. Otherwise, I'll jump in with another one of mine as well. I have on a completely different topic. So you mentioned also the AI Council, and you've done a lot of work on integrating and embracing new technology and how we can integrate that and make things better. I'd love to hear from you both the sort of best promise of AI and what you think the best thing it can do for us and the sort of ideal, as well as what are the biggest concerns that we should have about the ethics, safety, bias, et cetera, of AI now, and how do we protect ourselves against that?
So number one, in terms of small business, AI will be a great opportunity for small businesses to look at some of our biggest solutions. For example, there's a company working on the burnout rate for nurses and how you monitor their nurses and what we could do to make sure they have a good both mental and physical health optimization in what they do. Now, the interesting thing about AI is, AI can't replace like LIUNA 242, the laborers union, who's endorsed my candidacy. There's certain things AI cannot and should not replace. But you take something like a police officer's report that sometimes takes them hours to do. AI could generate it in minutes. And so we could look at a lot of efficiencies that can occur. Now, what is scary is the cybersecurity threats that this poses, the deep fakes, if you will. And, right now, Kristi Noem, the former governor of South Dakota, is in charge of Homeland Security and cybersecurity. This is scary when you have the Elon Musks and the Richard Thiels and the Mark Andreessens. These billionaires have access to personal information. And so the biggest threats are going to be through cybersecurity and personal invasions. You may recall that I authored the privacy surveillance ordinance for the city of Seattle because I want to protect all of your privacy. So that's going to be the threat, the cybersecurity threats that I'm doing a lot of work on. And that's why I'm nationally recognized as sort of a leader in this. I was the only mayor to produce an AI policy for cities to use. I've shared it with other mayors. I'm worried about cybersecurity, and I will assure all of you that AI is not a means to take people's jobs. It's a means to make us more efficient.
Right, thank you. We're just about out of time. So if I don't see another hand up, so I will give you a chance to finish up with a minute of anything we didn't cover or any final thoughts that you have.
Well,
And then we'll conclude. Go
thank
ahead.
you, Amanda. First of all, I don't say this in a token way. 36 has endorsed me in previous races, and I hope that you'll look at me warmly as an endorsement. The fact of the matter is that are Democrats. We've taken some losses, and my position is nonpartisan, but I lead with being a Democrat. And I think that what we have to do is we have to support one another. I'll just be candid with you. Um, nothing has come easy for me. I outwork everyone. That's just the fact of the matter is I started running in 2007 and I have not stopped working for this city. And so I hope that you'll look at someone that will protect your values. If I make a mistake, you saw my chief of police, for the first time, said he made a mistake in the newspaper 2 days ago. You've never heard a chief of police say something like that. That is how we're going to get better. We don't say we're perfect, but we have a North Star, which is treating people fairly and kindly. And again, they could attack me or my administration, but you can't attack our integrity and our love for people, for underrepresented people. So I hope you'll look at me favorably, and I seek your endorsement and your vote.
Great. Thank you so much. That concludes the recorded part of our interview. So I'm going to stop the recording.